So hopefully after that very long launch, you will find this activity a little bit easier to follow. This is activity 2, toward a more general slope formula. So they just give you 2 points. Point A is going to be labeled 111 is going to be labeled A, and 0.82, so the x value is 8, the y value is 2, is going to be labeled point B. So this is A, 1 unit on the x-axis, 11 units on the y-axis, and this is B, 8 units on the x-axis, and 2 units on the y-axis. And I'm going to look at this as moving from A to B. So in this case, we're moving downhill. So this is the opposite of the 4 problems that we just looked at in the launch. So the difference from A to B, so you're moving from A to B. And this language is important. If you talk about the difference from A to B, that means you're moving from A to B. If you talk about the difference between B and A, that means you're moving from A to B. So when you talk about difference between, you use that word between. Where you end up, you say that first. Where you start, you say that second. So what's the difference between B and A? So that's moving from A to B. So these are both the same. And likewise, this is the same. So what's the value of B minus A? So where I end, I'm going to subtract from where I end. I'm going to subtract where I start from where I end. So this is the end minus the start. So B is the end, 8, 2, and you're going to subtract from that the start, 1, 11. So you're going to work with these numbers, and that's why you have to place some attention into how you're saying this and how you're lining up these values to find the difference. All right, in the first step, it says, draw this line, place the points, draw the line. It says, without calculating, do you expect the slope of the line through 111 and 82 to be positive or negative? How can you tell? And in this case, you're moving as you move from the left to the right. So you're moving from the left to the right. You're moving downhill. So this is a negative slope. And I'm drawing these arrows this way because we're going to slide the slope triangle. So this becomes the slope triangle. We're going to slide the slope triangle down, and then we're going to slide this slope triangle actually in the opposite direction. We're going to slide it down and then to the left. But this is the slope triangle. So you're moving from the left to the right. You're going downhill. So this is a negative slope. And the idea of moving the slope triangle is to get this point right here, the vertex of that slope triangle, to the origin. So then when you read the x values and the y values, those are the change. That's how many units the x value is changing along the x-axis and how many units y is changing along the y-axis. That's why you move it to 0, 0. And we've done that a lot. And so I'm going to place, so here are the points, 1, 11, and 8, 2, and I'm circling the 11 and I'm circling the 8 because I'm going to place this point right here because this is the reference point. This is what we're looking at as we subtract these 11 units. We're going to subtract 11 units and we're going to subtract this 1 unit from this 8. So we'll come back to this. But so this point right here is 8, 11. So this is the vertex of the slope triangle. So you're going out 8 units and up 11 units. And that 8 right here is the same as this x-coordinate here. This 8 units here. And that 11 right here is the same as these 11 units right here. We're going to use these units to calculate the slope in a moment. So we're going to slide it down. And so how many units are we going to slide this down? We're going to actually slide it down 11 units. And we're going to slide it over. How many units are we going to slide it over? Just 1 unit. So we're going to slide this down 11 units and slide it over 1 unit. So how do you do that? Using the numbers. So x and y. So this is where we end. We end at 0.82. And where we started at 111. So the first thing is the change in y is 2 minus 11. So that's where this 11 comes in. I'm going to take this 2 right here from this point and subtract this 11 units. We're going to slide this down 11 units. So where's this point going to end up at? Well, it's going to end up way down here at a negative value. And that negative value is -9. So 2 minus 11, that's the same as adding a negative 11. So I'm going to change this to addition, use the inverse operation, and use the additive inverse of a positive 11. Remember, this is a positive 11 right here. So this is 2 plus a negative 11. Well, to figure that out, you find the difference of their absolute value. This is 11 negatives, 11 things. This is 2 positives, 2 things. So what's the difference between 11 things and 2 things? 11 minus 2 is 9. And this takes on a negative sign because you have more negatives. So a little review right there. So this change is -9. So we end up at -9 down here. So that means that the number of units that this changes are those 9 units, -9. All right. And so we slid it down. So now we're going to slide it over. I'm going to slide it over just this 1 unit. So it's going to be 8. So now we're using this 8 right here. And we're sliding it over this 1 unit. So we're taking away this 1 unit right here and sliding it over to right here. So the change now is going to be a -9 units and a positive 1 unit. We slid it over just 1 unit. I'm sorry, the change is going to be a positive 7 units because we subtracted that 1 unit. Sorry about that. All right, so 8 minus 1 is going to give you the change in the x value. So let's say that again. So now we have, let's go back. So we've slid it down 11 units. So that's a change. This change now is -9 because we started at 2 and positive 2 and we subtracted 11. So that change is -9. And now we're going to slide it over. So this change is positive 7. To get out to here, it's positive 7. To get down to here, it's -9. So the slope is that -9. So over positive 7. So every positive 7 units, what happens to the change in y? The change in y changes to -9 units. So for every positive 7 units, there's a -9 unit change in y. That is the y equals mx part of the equation. M is the slope. M is -9/7. But what's b? So where does this line cross the y-axis up here? So what is b? So we're going to figure out, we're going to use this information that we have now and figure out the equation. So this is going to be kind of tough. And the first step is to write the change in y, which is y minus 11. So here's the y minus that 11. That's what we did here. We took the y value right here, and we subtracted that 11. So that slid this down, and that's equal to -9. So y minus 11 is the change in y, and x minus 1. So then we took this, we slid it over that 1 unit. So x minus 1 right here is the change in x, and that was 7 units. So what that means is that the change in y minus 11, is a -9/7 the change in x. So you can take whatever the change in x is and multiply it by a -9/7, and that's going to give you the change in y. And this gets harder and harder to see as we move away from easy numbers, easy whole numbers. but keep it as fractions and don't worry about it right now. All right, so the next step is to write this. So y minus 11 is a negative 9/7 the change in x, which is x minus 1. So now we can write that. Y minus 11 equals a negative 9/7 times the change in x, x minus 1. So the change in y is a negative 9/7 the change in x. So now we can write that equation. And so now if we have, actually, I want to rewrite this x minus 1 as x plus a negative 1. So you can use the inverse operation and use the additive inverse. Remember, this is a positive 1 right here. So now we can use the additive inverse, which is negative 1. It just makes it easier to multiply this fraction out here, this factor, times a negative 1 than up here. You'll see that in a second. All right, so now I have a negative 9/7 times whatever is inside this parentheses, a negative 9/7, this quantity. Well, that's a negative 9/7 x, and then this negative 1 means the opposite of a negative 9/7. That's why I want to change this up here to negative 1, because now when I multiply, I can look at it as the opposite of negative 9/7, which is positive 9/7. So now we're here. So y minus 11, that's this y minus 11, is equal to negative 9/7 x. So if you have this quantity that you're multiplying by negative 9/7, that means you have a negative 9/7 x, and you have the opposite of a negative 9/7, which is a positive 9/7. Okay, now I want to change this 11 to 7s because everything is in 7s. And I want to be able to add that 11 back. If I subtracted 11, so I moved this down all the way down here by subtracting 11, I want to add that 11 back. And so the way to add that 11 back is to treat this as 7s. Well, 11 is how many 7s? What's 7 times 11? It's 77. So 11 is 77 7s. So I subtracted 77 7s, which is the same as subtracting 11. And at the same time, I added 9 7s. So I'm going to add this 9 7s back, and I'm also going to add this, I'm going to add 77 7s back, and I'm going to also add this 9 7s to that. So it's 9 plus 77. 9 plus 77 is 86 7s. This seems tough and it's hard to say, but as you work through it, I think that you'll see it's not that bad, even though the fractions seem difficult to deal with. So this is a negative 9/7 x. That hasn't changed. But now I added 77 7s plus 9 7s. 9 plus 77 is 86. So this is 86 7s. And so where does this cross the y-axis? Well, 86 7s is what mixed number? 86 7s is 12 and 2 7s. 12 times 7 is 84, and you have 2 7s left over. So this is 12 and 2 7s, and that's about right. So if you go up here and you extend this line up, you're going to go past the 12. It's going to just be 2 7s beyond that 12. All right. So I'm going to label all the steps once again. So here's all the steps. And I would suggest that you go through this, start here, and write out this equation, then go through each of these steps on your own and see if you understand what's going on. Try to do it without looking, and then check your answers by looking back here. All right, so let's use a value for x and see if we get the correct value for y. So we can either use 1 or 8 and see if we use 1, we should get 11 out, or if we use 8, we should get 2. So what I chose to do is use the 8 and the 2. So I'm going to use 8 as x and see if I get 2 out as an answer. So 8 is going to be x, and do I get 2 as an answer? So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to plug in for this value x right here, I'm going to plug in this 8. I should get an answer in the end of 2. Y should be equal to 2. once I work this out. All right, so it's 8 times 9. So now I replace that x with 8. What's 8 times 9? 8 times 9 is 72. So this is going to be a negative 72 sevenths plus a positive 86 sevenths. Well, what's the difference between 72 and 86? You might be able to see that already. To go from 72 to 82 is 10, plus another 4, it's going to be 14. So negative 72 sevenths, that's this 8 times this negative 9, plus 86 sevenths. And now I'm going to add 86 positives plus 72 negatives, and 86 positives plus 72 negatives. That's going to equal, that's the same as 86 minus 72. So I can use the inverse operation, subtraction, and use the additive inverse of a negative 72 to change that to a positive 72. And so 86 minus 72. And this goes back to another way to think about this is just take the absolute value of each of these, find the difference, and it's going to take a positive sign because there are more positives. By absolute value, I mean that you have 86 things here, 86 positives, and you have 72 things here, 72 negatives. So the absolute value is 86. The absolute value is 72. It is the number of things that you have. Forget about the sign. Subtract them. You're going to end up with 14. And this is going to be a positive 14 because you have more positives than negatives. Well, 14 sevenths is equal to 2. So you end up with, when the x value is 8, the y value is 2. So this works. So zoom out so you can see everything together. And then on your own, I would suggest that you plug in a value of 1 for x. So 1 times 9 sevenths. Actually, you can do that pretty quickly. 1 times a negative 9 sevenths is a negative 9 sevenths. So 86 plus a negative 9. What's 86 minus 9? That is 77. What's 77 sevenths? That is equal to 11. So you can almost do that in your head. So you can practice that a little bit one more time. So I'm using x as a value of 1. 1 times a negative 9 sevenths is negative 9 sevenths. 86 minus 9, or 86 plus a negative 9, is 77. 86 minus 10 would be 76. 86 minus 9 is 1 less than that, or 77. 77 sevenths gives you this answer of 11. All right, this is activity 2.